Right.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Fazio. I am a state senator for Greenwich, Stamford, and New Canaan. The CT169 Strong group, which is a nonprofit that advocates for local control, and some Senate and House Republican legislators wanted to host a press conference today to show our support for local control of our towns and cities here in Connecticut, for bringing change and reform to the state's 830G housing law, which has been on the books for 30 years, and for building affordable housing in a sustainable manner with local buy-in. Obviously, we're also hosting this press conference on the same day that the Desegregate Connecticut Work, Live, Ride proposal will be heard in a public hearing before the Planning and Development Committee, of which I am the Senate ranking member. It is a proposal among several before the legislature this year, which many people in my district and across the state view as another attempt to roll back local input and control, either through mandates or by holding a lot of funding over the heads of municipalities. So we wanted to show our support for the time-honored tradition of local control in the state, but also that there's better ways forward to achieve affordable housing goals in the state, including several bills that were submitted in the legislature, including by myself and Senator Gordon and Representative O'Day, and some of our friends on the other side of the aisle, like Representative Ali Brennan, whom I co-introduced 3 bills with along these lines. To give you some flavor of some of the alternatives, again, there are alternatives. There is a better way, even though those bills have not been in the past passed through committee like some of the other attempts to address the issue have been. They involve ensuring that all municipalities have access to funding to build affordable housing in a way that has their local input and their local buy-in. When I talk to municipal leaders, they first and foremost tell me that there's a lot of pride in their town for the affordable housing that they have built, and that they would build more if there was more state support for their municipalities, which are subject to 830G, to the sticks of the state, the mandates of the state, but don't have as much access to funding in order to construct more affordable housing with local input. It also involves fixing the state subsidy system, I think, the voucher system, and unlocking some of those vouchers so there could be more flexibility for people in need who need some state support for their housing. That's something that hopefully we can work on in a bipartisan manner. I think there's been support shown for that approach from both sides of the aisle. And I think whenever we can find bipartisan agreement, as we have on many of the bills that we have submitted, that those should be prioritized. Those efforts are the best to prioritize. And there are ways that we can fix the existing state statute 830G. Again, I did not, and the other legislators on here did not submit what we would view as significant overhauls of existing state statute, even though we could have. We actually tried to surgically propose legislation that will fix the biggest problems with the law, while also promoting affordability goals at the same time. That involves making sure that towns are credited for and therefore can promote all forms of affordable housing, not just government housing, and that the towns have more flexibility when there is set aside development, private affordable development under 830G, in order to ensure that it fits the preferences and the specifications of towns and cities. So the basic premise, again, the reason that we're here, and I'm going to yield the floor to some of my colleagues and friends who are very strong advocates for this cause. The basic premise for which we're here is that we want to see a stop to so many of these efforts to roll back local control, which are almost difficult to keep track of. There's so many different bills. But more importantly, we think that there is a better way. We can protect our time-honored traditions of local control of our towns and cities, and we can achieve our affordability goals as a state in a sustainable way with local buy-in. So with that, I'd like to also introduce my colleague, Senator Jeff Gordon, who is also a local zoning official and has a great deal of experience on the matter. Senator?
Well, thank you very much, Senator, and I appreciate all the work and leadership you've been doing on this. So thank you. I'm State Senator Jeff Gordon, 35th District. I represent the good people of Ashford, Chaplin, Coventry, Eastford, Ellington, Hampton, Stamford, Thompson, Tolland, Union, Vernon, Wellington, and Woodstock. A lot of territory in Northeast Connecticut. And for the past 16 years, I've been chair of my town, Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission. So I live this every day with regards to what do we do to try to help people with housing, use their land, affordability of housing. As Senator Fazio said, the bills that are being promoted by folks, including by Desegregate Connecticut, really are attacking local decision making. And one of the things that is extremely important to highlight, and I highlight this all the time that I can, is that the people of Connecticut know best what is best for the towns in which they live. That's why they elect local leaders from their community to represent them, and they work with them in each town. And we know that each municipality in Connecticut is unique. We have 169 of them. And within each town, there's different unique parts of it. I can tell you in Woodstock, we have at least 6, 7 or more unique parts of just my rural town. One of the things we have to keep in mind is, number one, the way that the state is running its affordable housing efforts through 830G are way outdated and antiquated and really do need a big reform. But the reform is not to do a top-down approach, one-size-fits-all method, coming from the state onto the towns to tell them what to do, when a lot of the bureaucrats in the state haven't even been to those towns and understand what's going on. What we really need to do is facilitate the good work that our towns are doing. For example, from experience, we've been doing that in Woodstock. We do look at a lot of affordability, but a lot of small towns don't have public infrastructure, transportation, even local jobs to support a lot of affordable housing. One of the things that I advocate for, which is second on my list, is a way to really help reform the efforts around affordability. And I do support good efforts to try to have affordable housing, is to get away from this antiquated, very strict definition of affordable housing that the state has. And that's why many towns can't meet the 10% affordable housing threshold, is to look at the reality of what I call attainable housing. What can we do to help senior citizens? What can we do to help young families? What can we do to help people whose children have left? They're middle-aged, but they want to stay where they are in town. There's a lot you can do to broaden the definition of what we consider affordable. Towns are working on that. We shouldn't be trying to hit the towns with a stick approach and threaten them with losing discretionary grants and funds that they need to support things like their schools and their roads and their bridges. We should be working with them, recognizing what they're doing that works, and facilitating as best as we can that type of effort, again, in each town. And I'll end by saying that if you look at towns, and I've done this with every single town in my district, all 13, they are working on this, and they have been working on this for years. The state needs to be a good partner and, again, not be heavy-handed, but really be a friend and facilitate what can be done. And that's a reason why I'm proud to join people in opposing some of these efforts to take away local decision-making and steer it in a better direction, which is really the realistic way of reforming all of this for affordable housing everywhere in our state.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your experience and your words. I'd like to pass it to Representative Tom O'Day. My pleasure. Someone needs to mute.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Fazio and Senator Gordon and Alexis and Maria. Thank you for Connecticut 169 Strong. Thank you for setting up this press conference, and thank you all for attending. My name is Tom O'Day. I'm state representative for the 125th district, which is New Canaan, part of Darien and the northern part of Stamford. I've had the pleasure of representing New Canaan for the last 10 years in the legislature and now into 11. And there is no dispute that 830G has not worked as drafted. New Canaan has doubled its affordable housing stock and has renovated all of it within the last 8 to 10 years. And all of that has come by the municipality doing the work. There has been no private building of affordable housing by builders since in over 20 years. So there's no dispute it's not working. So we've got proposals that are bipartisan that would fix that. And whether it's, my idea was to give towns the right of first refusal when predatory building comes in. I think that's got bipartisan support. Or we allow more of the stock to count towards affordable housing so it actually gets done. I had the pleasure of having Hugh Williams, God bless him, come down to New Canaan and look around. And Hugh, who at the time was chair of the housing committee, he admitted it wasn't working, and New Canaan was doing a good job. But we need help, and we need local control. And so, hopefully the word will get out. You all will help spread the word that there are bipartisan ideas that will help create affordable housing in communities like New Canaan and Darien. Stamford has qualified for the moratorium. It's obviously a much bigger community. It's getting a lot of state money to build that affordable housing. So happy to answer questions. I really appreciate you all here and looking forward to getting bipartisan solutions to this problem.
Thank you, Representative. I'd like to hand it off to the president of CT169 Strong, Alexis Harrison, who's a zoning official in Fairfield, as well as the founder of 169 Strong, Maria Weingarten, who is a finance official in New Canaan.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Again, Alexis Harrison, president of CT169 Strong. Great to see so many people here. And I really want to acknowledge, I see a lot of local officials in the audience, people serving on the RTM. I see First Selectman of Greenwich, Fred Camillo, Wilton Selectman, Kim Healy, and so many others. Really appreciate your support for local control. I don't think any of us really want to be here, but we feel like that we must. We've been around for 3 years. We've been aiming to inform and educate people on the bills because we see them as bad policy, as removing local control, which is a time-honored tradition here in Connecticut. And quite frankly, bills that really don't create affordability, but rather density in our communities. I serve on our local TP&Z in Fairfield. And twice a month, I hear from people all the time on on various applications, and that public voice is such a key component to decision making. We're just ordinary citizens who believe that zoning matters and it should be decided in a thoughtful and deliberate way, not in a vacuum, not by one group of people, but with input really from the entire community. And that's why we're here. And we are pro affordable housing. There's no question about it. I think we all work in a collaborative manner in our communities to make sure it does come to reality. But the proposed bills that we're seeing this session tend to replace that local zoning commissioners it really fails to act on behalf of their communities who place their trust in them and to manage permanent changes to our towns. Zoning benefits communities. I think zoning has gotten a bad rap in recent years, but it really, provides development in an organized way. It protects our environment. It protects home values, and it's really, essential to proper planning. We do love our towns. We don't want to see control to a bureaucrat in Hartford. Connecticut has a long history, which is enshrined in our Constitution, of home rule. And we believe we can do better. We can all work together. I really think if we coalesce, if we come together, real progress can be made to enhancing and increasing affordable housing, but having it done by various, interest groups just isn't the right way. So thank you again. I want to toss it to Maria Weingarten.
Good morning. My name is Maria Weingarten. I am from New Canaan, a former auditor with PwC and a member of New Canaan's Board of Finance. This bill isn't about creating affordability in Connecticut. Since most of the bills we've seen don't require affordable until over 6 to 10 units, there's really no more than 10% affordable on average for most areas in the state, and even less than that. Members of Desegregate Connecticut, backed by developer-funded interests, have admitted that this is about adding more state income tax revenue to the state's rolls. A free option to the state, since developers would build density with 90% market value units, which is a gift to developers who can build it, run off with their profits, while the municipalities are forced to deal with the aftermath when the state does not cover the infrastructure impacts and have to increase local property taxes to cover the infrastructure issues, moving our state from already having the second highest tax burden to number one from number two. It's time to collaborate with local land use experts on better policy, not developer-backed special interests. Stop drafting onerous, unworkable zoning bills and really address affordability, if that's really what we're intending on doing. Help fund 100% affordable, as Representative O'Day mentioned, in towns that are working to create it, instead of giving the lion's share of grants from the state's coffers and voucher allocations to the largest cities, which already have over 10% per their 830G calculation, which ends up just concentrating poverty. Let's also, as mentioned before by Senator Fazio, reform and centralize the voucher allocations and the waitlist system to make sure that we are directly helping those who need that, who are housing challenged and need the help most and most quickly. But most of all, if you do not address the business unfriendly policies that have stagnated our economy, Connecticut will just keep spiraling downward without migration in most of our state. Economic growth is truly the only sustainable way to improve affordability for our residents. Scapegoating zoning and forcing overdevelopment of market value, high density apartment rentals is not the answer, and it never was. If we had a vibrant economy, business would already be flocking to Connecticut, and the private market would have stepped in to build this additional market value housing, but it's not. It's time to do better. And that's why we really do believe that we need to work in a more collaborative way to ensure that those local land use experts who are the true stewards of our land use are better involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria and Alexis. I would like also to hear from Mr. Mandell, Matt Mandell from Westport, who is a zoning official in that town.
Hi, good morning. My name is Matthew Mandell. I'm a Democrat and on Westport's representative town meeting and chair of its planning and zoning committee. I'm here today to talk about Live, Work, Ride specifically and the issues about how it's a flawed piece of legislation. I have 6 reasons and I'll go through them quickly as I can. The first one, they claim that it's an opt-in for the communities, but it's actually an arm twist in that if a municipality chooses not to be part of the new regulation, they will lose state funding for their infrastructure, sewers, roads, and schools. That is not an opt-in, that's a mandate, and that's an issue that still must be addressed. The other next reason is it's all as of right building, meaning that local control and decision by the planning and zoning commissions will be removed. And that means a developer can come in and choose where they want to do it and how they want to do it. The reason to have special permitting is to allow a municipality to decide where and how it should be done, whether or not there's the infrastructure there, whether or not there'll be environmental impacts or not. To allow developers to pick and choose at will is just a gift to developers, which is exactly what this legislation is. It's a gift to developers to allow them to cut and run and be gone and leaving the towns holding the bag. Parking standard. The concept with the parking standard is they want to create a walkable community. And that's a phenomenal goal to achieve. But you cannot create the commercial infrastructure by fiat. If the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker is not within this zone, not within this walkable community, the people need their cars to drive. And in Westport's case, all of the shopping is 2 to 3 miles away from the train stations. So anybody who's living there will not be able to have their cars because there will not be enough parking. It creates a 2-class system, those that have cars and those that don't. And that's not exactly what you're supposed to be doing when you're looking to create affordable situation or to desegregate the towns. Also, with the parking standard, part of it is to allow for greater development and cheaper development because you don't have to have the parking. And that is another gift to developers by having this done. The parking standard does not work for suburban communities where people need to be able to get to their schools, need to be able to take their kids to their after-school things, and of course, be able to shop. Also, the other concept is, who's to say that the people living here are going to be using Metro North to get to their jobs? I suggest they don't. I suggest they will also need cars to get to their jobs as well. So the parking standard is really problematic for communities where people are set up to still drive around. The next is density does not equal affordability. The concept with Live, Work, Ride is to create huge amounts of density in order to change the market structure to then decrease the housing costs to create affordability. But when you look at Norwalk, that's created thousands of units over the last few years, they have not seen any decrease in the housing costs at all. What the theory is really supposed to be doing here, and Desegregate Connecticut has said it many times, is to ultimately create so much housing that it buckles the underlying financial structure of the property values. And that will hurt the people who have bought in to their area, have bought property, own their houses, and now if it buckles, they will be losing their interest. And if their houses and their mortgages go underwater, they could actually lose their houses. So the idea of just unbridled development in order to create affordable housing is not a good theory. It doesn't work. And I'm curious, how come no model has been done looking at the future to see what would occur? The fifth, there is no affordability created by this piece of legislation. As Maria just said prior, the inclusionary aspect of this doesn't kick in until you have 10 units. Now they want to build 20 units per acre. So in the more wealthy communities where property values are high, a developer will come in and build what? How many? 9 units, avoiding having to build affordability. So they will build 9 units, and then the next one will build 9 units, and the next one will build 9 units, basically crawling across the community, not creating affordability, and instead building multi-million-dollar condominiums, because that's what condominiums go for in Westport and other communities of wealth. This doesn't create any affordability. This is against the entire theory of creating affordability and desegregating our town. All it is a gift to developers to come in, cut and run, take their profit, and leaving the municipalities and ultimately the state holding the bag. Let me bring up the last one. Climate change. The theory here is that we're supposed to be densifying along the rail corridor. That would be the Metro North corridor. Now, where's the Metro North corridor? It's all along the water. So if you go to the CT Deep's website, they have pages on theories on maps and where coastal flooding will be occurring in the future because of sea rise. Westport's train station within 20 years is slated to be inaccessible during high tide in 20 years. Is this really where we're supposed to be densifying? Is this really where we're supposed to be building? Common theory for global warming is we're supposed to be building more to the north. We're supposed to be building more where there's height. And we're supposed to be gradually retreating from the coastline as sea rise occurs. Now, if people don't believe in climate change, then you can go ahead and densify. I, for one, believe that this is occurring and that we should be wary of it. But what's going to occur? Developers are going to come in, they're going to build, they're going to cut and run, and who's going to be left holding the bag? First of all, the people who are living there, the ones in the affordable housing who do not have the finances to be able to move as quickly, and the state will be left holding the bag. The municipalities will be holding the bag. Developers will have cut, run, taken their profits, and gotten out of here. Those are the 6 reasons why this particular piece of legislation is flawed. But here's my greater theory here. 830J was created 2 years ago for towns to create their own affordability plans. And they've been diligently working on this. And I was on 2 state subcommittees working on helping towns create these plans. But my question is, if we're supposed to be working on it, why are there all these pieces of legislation coming that would completely supersede all of this? Which is it? Are you going to have the towns work on their 830Js and create their affordability plans and work on it as they're supposed to do? Or are you going to come in with legislation that basically usurps it all and make it moot, and they shouldn't be doing any of this? That's my problem. The whole idea is this is supposed to be built as of right. The problem is it's as of wrong. My name's Matthew Mandell. You can reach me at mmandell@westportct.gov. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
I think we need Mr. Mandell in Hartford with us. Thank you very much for that. And finally, I would like to go to Commissioner Steve Mullins from West.
Hello.
Steve, you're on mute.
Apologize for that. All right. Again, my name is Stephen Mullins. I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the city of West Haven from January of 2007 to January of this past January 2023. And municipalities elect or appoint talented local individuals who have an array of backgrounds, whether it be in real estate, law, or anything. The most important qualification is concerned citizen. They elect these individuals or appoint these individuals to serve in our planning and zoning commissions, basically because they know the city or town that they're in. They live there, they deal with the regulations and live within the regulations that they create. So that is what's important. You don't have these nameless, faceless bureaucrats from Hartford who are deciding on what's happening in your particular municipality. And for 16 years in this very room, the Harriet North courtroom on the second floor of West Haven City Hall, I listened to individuals from all facets of West Haven life come here to support or speak against certain applications that were coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission. These are matters that affected them and their neighborhoods, their individual communities, as soon as the very next day. What many bureaucrats in Hartford and legislators are looking to do is to take that individual freedom away from the local individuals, people who live and have to deal with the ramifications of what happens in their communities. And that's what we have to stop. What is good here in West Haven is not necessarily good for our neighboring towns of Orange and Milford, and not necessarily good for Woodstock or any other area in the city, in the state of Connecticut. Every individual municipality needs their own local talent to take care of what's happening there. We cannot have one size fits all. It's going to hurt us individually. It's going to hurt the state as a whole. So what else do I have here? And I think that's it. I'm going to give it right back to Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Appreciate your input and experience on the ground. With that, I know there's a couple reporters on the line. If any of them want to ask questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Hi, Senator Fazio. This is Mark Fitch with Connecticut Inside Investigator. Could you go into a little bit more about what you're hoping to see changed about 830G? Particularly when it comes to the housing stock that towns like Greenwich already have, because I've heard that come up a couple times before, in that, under 830G, the affordable stock that they have isn't counted towards those numbers. I mean, can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, Mark, thanks for the question. So Representative O'Day and I put in several bills, some separately, some together. And I put in some bills with Representative Ali Brennan from Bethel as well. And one of them calls for counting all naturally occurring affordable housing. And basically the process I foresee under such a reform would be giving municipalities the option for providing verification for any forms of naturally occurring affordable housing based on the rents that are actually paid. Rather than the current system, which only allows deed restricted or government supported housing to count. That obviously excludes a large amount of the stock that is affordable, that real people, working class people, are living in and need. And by precluding it from counting to the towns, it also inevitably does not allow us to encourage and promote that type of affordable housing, which often has more local buy-in as well. So I would imagine that you would give the municipality the optionality to count those forms of affordable housing stock. And then because of that, they would then take up some sort of, Fred, I think if you can mute, they would be required to provide verification whether it's through leases or affidavits or the assessor's office. And potentially what they would do and change then is also provide incentive for those affordable property owners as well. So a tax abatement or something like that. Again, it would be an option for towns, but obviously they would have an incentive to do it. And then they in turn would probably have to find an incentive or would find an incentive to promote that form of discrete, naturally occurring affordable housing in its own right. That's what my kind of proposal envisions. I'd be happy to hear from Representative O'Day as well, because I know.
Yeah, so thank you, Senator Fazio. So Mark, I guarantee you, if Ryan's proposal and my proposal got put in place, we would have more affordable housing. My 5783 required if a predatory builder came in and negotiated a number of units and built no affordable housing, which has happened in New Canaan for the last 20 years. There's been no private builders building affordable housing. Under 5783, the town could buy that property as a right of first refusal, and then they would have to put in a percentage of affordable housing somewhere within a period of time in town. So you would guarantee affordable housing being built by the municipality, which would be 100% as opposed to a 10% affordable. And so, so New Canaan sent 10%, or I'm sorry, $12 million in conveyance fees last year, the year before. And another bill, 5784, would allow 10% of that to be kept by New Canaan to help build affordable housing. Land is so expensive in Southern Fairfield County that it makes building affordable housing very difficult. Allowing the municipalities, all municipalities, to get funding from the state, not just distressed, would also allow municipalities or help municipalities in Lower Fairfield County build more affordable housing by getting some state funding. That's 5791 that would give it not just money from the state, not to just distressed communities, but also Lower Fairfield County communities.
If I just may add something real quick, this is Senator Gordon. When we look at rural towns, take a look at Northeast Connecticut. I represent and where I live. Trying to do a lot of affordable housing the way the state wants it, when you don't have really much in the way of public infrastructure, let alone public transportation or lots of local jobs, is nearly impossible. And I do agree, one of the ways to get to more affordable housing is to broaden what we define as affordable. Again, I like the term attainable, where you can, through meaningful land use regulations, where you can through good town policies, but also state policies working with the towns, really drill down and find out what is really attainable for people of different categories and in different age ranges. I can tell you, for example, in Woodstock, we have been doing that. Those are types of efforts that really help people on the ground. That's one of the ways I envision that an 830G reform can take place. And again, it recognizes that every town is unique in the different parts of the state, and a one-size-fits-all can never work when you're talking about what happens down, let's say, in Fairfield County versus what happens up in Windham County or Tolland County. So again, it really requires the effort to see what is going on with the towns. I think the state will be very surprised if it opens up its eyes and really learns what is happening in all these different towns and really understands then how to better broaden and reform 830G. And again, the goal is just not to reach a certain target on a state spreadsheet. It's really in the real world trying to make things more attainable for people.
Thank you, Senator. Mark, or any other reporters?
Yeah, Jenny Monk, Connecticut Mirror. Senator Fazio, Representative O'Day, just kind of looking at the CGA website at both of those bills, it doesn't look like either of them has gotten a vote in housing, which has JF'd. Do you have another vehicle which you're hoping to sort of attach these measures to reform 8-30G?
You know, we would have obviously liked to see those drafted or raised. You know, obviously, Representative O'Day's bill, a House Republican bill, was raised for a public hearing. I will leave it to Tom to kind of expand on any potential other avenues he foresees.
So, Jeannie, it's a very good question. You know, I'm hopeful that in a bipartisan manner, we can make positive changes to 830G that, maybe might not be ideal to one side or the other, but the House Republican bill did get a hearing, and we're hopeful that there was a lot of testimony on how we could fix 830G. Those are minor fixes in what's includable in the affordable housing category, but we're hopeful that on a bipartisan basis we can work with the governor's office and the majority and make some positive impact on it.
Thank you. And if I can just ask one more, Mr. Mandell, you had mentioned, these statewide reforms and sort of the local level plans. I mean, can you expand on why those couldn't sort of work together?
You can't work together if you've got a piece of legislation such as fair share or work share ride, where they're mandating 20 units per acre, and have towns then, as of right, being put in, where towns can decide where they think they should be putting the affordable housing. Now, Westport doesn't get enough credit for the work that it's done. We've created hundreds of units of housing, and we have an inclusionary aspect of 20% of everything that you build, which drowns out what Desegregate Connecticut tries to do. So the point is that we would like to be able to say, yeah, we want to build our affordable housing along the Post Road. We think that's the best place to do it. Where Desegregate Connecticut says, oh, it should be by the train station, where we don't think that that's the proper place to have it. So you take that as a microcosm for the 169 different towns that want to be able to control it themselves and say, hey, we want to build affordable housing. We want to put it here and here and here and make it work properly. Now, maybe we put 30 units on an acre in a certain spot, which would be our choice to do it, not have the state telling us how it should be done. That's the difference between 830J and the things that are going here. And I worked on these different reports to make sure that we gave them the best tools necessary to be able to create a good plan moving forward. And we should allow that to play out. That's the whole goal of what the state wanted to be doing, not have new legislation that usurps it all.
Sure.
And I just add one point as well on that is when towns build 100% affordable, that's not sunsetting. All of these bills that add a amount of inclusionary in a policy in a development that's mostly market value, those are all going to sunset and expire in 40 years. That only creates generational wealth for the developers and no one else if it's rental units. So the reality is, if you help and partner with towns and cities, whoever wants to build additional affordable, recognize the fact that it's so much more expensive, as has been mentioned by Representative O'Day, you begin to understand that help the towns that want to build it where the state wants to see it. And that's what hasn't happened so far. We want collaboration. We want to see more direct relationship with the actual land use experts that are the boots on the ground, that are the true and proper stewards of our land use. And that's what we're hoping is going to happen going forward. And that's what we have not seen in 3 years. And we still continuously, we will hear today from more local experts who understand and who are trying to tell legislators that this is not the proper path forward. And we hope that eventually they will listen.
I mean, one of the things that I'm working on is creating an affordable housing fund for Westport, basing it off of Fairfield, New Canaan, and Greenwich, that have this money that they're putting together. But it's not going to be enough to do it, and the state needs to find a way to give us the cash. One of the things that I'm also working on is the idea of having the mansion tax on the conveyance tax come back to the towns. So what happens is, if you have a house that's selling for $2-3 million, which is often the case in Westport and other wealthier communities, there's an excess amount of conveyance tax that goes to the state, to the general fund. Why shouldn't that money come back to those specific towns, because they're the ones generating it in the first place, have it earmarked specifically for affordable housing, and have the towns be able to buy land, to build and create it, and you could create 100% affordability and get to the mark that we need quicker. So there's a lot that can be done from the state's aspect, and not just telling us what to do, but aiding us in doing it ourselves.
That's a great point. And I just, if Ginny has a follow-up, but before she does, I wanted to also ask for Selectman Fred Camillo from Greenwich. where there has been a new affordable housing trust fund implemented. It's hitting the ground running and doing a good job. And there was also, I believe, an 830J, an affordable housing plan that the RTM in Greenwich passed last year as well. So I'd love to hear his input on that.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. A lot has been said here, and I completely agree. I can't add that much more, only that, to give a few examples here, what we're doing in Greenwich. And to echo my colleagues here that either we're going to be ruled by developers and Hartford legislators and advocates, or by local elected officials who are sent there by the local residents who know their town the best. In Greenwich, we were at 5.3% of that 10% for a while. Now we've been doing a lot lately, and we're up to about 5.7. And we have plans to renovate some of the old affordable housing, hundreds that we've had on since the 50s. And they're not counted now. So by renovating them now, we're going to be getting hundreds more. So we're going to be hoping to push towards that 7%. But it's really, really hard, as you've heard here. Land is very expensive. But we're making great strides, as the governor himself has said. We've also had a housing authority, which is now called Greenwich Communities, here for about 75 years. And what it was like at the beginning was, what housing would look like. My grandmother had lived for many years in one of those units in Armstrong Court in the Chickahominy section of Greenwich. And we didn't know any better. That's what housing was like. And it was very condensed. And as time went on, people started to just look down on just the look of it, the aesthetics. So our housing authority has been working really hard, and they're renovating. If you go by that same place that my grandmother lived in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, they look like townhomes now. It's really good. And what they're doing also for new units, they're actually putting them in neighborhoods. And that's the new way of thinking on this, is to integrate everybody. So it's not just lower economic groups living together. It's a wide range there, and that's working out very well. So instead of we're just saying we're for local control, we need to, I think, show a little bit more of what we're doing in our various towns and cities, so we don't have a gun over our head every time a developer puts in a proposal that will really change the landscape of every town. And we love Connecticut. We love the diversity of the towns. As I mentioned the other day at a mayoral forum with the mayors of New Rochelle, Stamford, and Norwalk, I love those towns. I especially love Stamford. We're right next door, and it's a vibrant city. But I don't want Greenwich to be Stamford, and Stamford doesn't want to be Greenwich. And it's trying to make everything the same is silly, and it will decrease values. And so that will be less money coming in to do the things we really want to do in Hartford. So I can't agree anymore with what's been said here, and looking forward to all the advocates here in CT169, which is doing a great job. Thank you for keeping us all informed and having our backs of all 169 municipalities.
And that's a great point, First Selectman. I mean, if you look across a lot of the towns that we have represented on this call, whether it's Woodstock and others in the Northeast, or Westport with some of its inclusionary policies, and New Canaan with Canaan Parish, and Greenwich with the new Affordable Housing Trust, and the governor coming down to the ribbon cutting at Armstrong Court, pointing out that Greenwich we're really working hard on advancing its affordable housing goals. And we have 4 Title I schools, which are great schools with great communities surrounding them, to show for it as well. I'd love for Terrace Beast Restieri to give an example of what the Affordable Housing Trust that Mr. Mandell referenced looks like in practice. It's in its nascence in Greenwich, but it's already doing very interesting things. It's creating affordable development with the local buy-in and with some local funding support as well.
Yeah, so thank you, Ryan. So in November of 2021, the RTM approved the Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the intention of the fund is to foster the creation of new units of affordable housing in the town, at the same time as using town management and influence to develop those units. So what we have done with the kickoff of ARPA funds is the board and council have been meeting with developers and putting together plans for an increased percentage of affordable housing, or sometimes even over and above what 830G is requesting, that will allow us to build smaller projects with more affordability. And this is actually working really well for us as these negotiations and conversations have been happening. We are then bringing those projects with the developer to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And what we're finding is there's a real, sort of collegial process that's really happening between the Affordable Housing Trust and the developers. Because what we are able to do is, from the economies of scale, allow a developer to make higher margins on affordable units, because we can allow them to use 80% of area median income versus state median income. And that's a major difference for a developer, so that we can actually make these projects smaller, but actually bring the affordability higher. And we're really hoping that a number of these projects, we're in discussions with 4 separate developers right now that would bring approximately 60 additional units of affordable housing to Greenwich in a very near term.
Thank you. And, we're coming up against a deadline because the public hearing on the legislation is going to start soon. I just want to give any of the reporters online any opportunity to ask any final questions.
If there's no other questions from reporters, I have something I'd like to add, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right. What I've been encouraging people here in West Haven is to be in contact with your legislator, your House member, your senator, and ask them what their opinions are on these matters. And I'm also encouraging planning and zoning commissions throughout the state to have a special meeting, no applications, invite your legislators that represent your particular town and have a good Q&A session about this, because they need to know and understand where you're coming from as a commissioner who deals with these matters on a regular basis, and how important it is to have local control, or I would say local authority over zoning matters. The only way this is going to work out in everyone's favor is if there's an open line of communication and we're all able to talk to each other.
Thank you,
If I
Mr.
just
Mullins.
add one quick thing, I just want to remind people, we know this, is that when we talk about affordable housing, attainable housing, it's not in a vacuum. I'm always mindful that we also need to keep in mind the affordability of the state of Connecticut, our cost of living and how we deal with that, energy costs and how we deal with that, good paying jobs that our businesses are providing throughout the state, and also the tax policies that this state puts into place. So we also want to keep in mind what is affecting people when we're talking about their ability to have affordable or attainable housing. And those are real concerns and real issues. And I know we won't get into a lot of that on this press conference, but those are things we think about, and I think a lot about as well. So I just want to make certain that we remember that in anything we do, especially in the legislature.
That's a great point, Senator, and a good one to end on. We need to reduce the tax burden in this state. We need to reduce electricity costs in this state. We need to reduce healthcare costs in this state. The legislators on this call and others have all submitted bills this very session that would do all of those things, that could reduce the cost of living and make the state more affordable by thousands of dollars per year. We need to act, and we're not on this call. All of us are not on this call to say, no, we're here to say, yes, let's go forward together with local leadership. We can protect local control in this state. We can achieve our affordable housing goals with local buy-in. We can create economic opportunity for all in this state, and we can support a great quality of life for all people. So now that we're bumping up against 11 a.m., we got to sign off here. There is a public hearing on legislation that we are opposing before the Planning and Development Committee. So we're going to sign off right now and appreciate everyone's time.